Welcome back, everyone. Whether you are a Wolverine, Buckeye, Spartan, or you row the boat with PJ Fleck, whatever you are, if you're a fan of college football and Big Ten football, you will enjoy this episode. So before you listen, give me a like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and comment your thoughts down below as this video is going on. I love to have conversation, and I just love to talk about football. So let's get right into this. First, I'm going to discuss my power rankings. Then I'm going to discuss my takeaways from this week regarding the Big Ten. And finally, I'm going to discuss what I think are known facts that this week confirmed. So let's get right into it. So one thing you might notice immediately is the fact that, the top two. The 24/7 Sports, I know, has Michigan State at 1. There are others who have them at 1. I'm trying to be more of a realist, and I've tried to kind of be that since the beginning of the year. Unfortunately, my Wolverines once again disappointed me. No surprises there if you're anyone but a Wolverine. Anyway, Ohio State is at 1 because I think they are 14 to 17 points better than anyone else on this list. And in the case of Michigan and Michigan State's matchups, them hosting Michigan State and them having a mental lock on Michigan, both of those victories might be by even more than 17 points. We'll see in the coming weeks. But Ohio State has the best roster. For now, the only exception might be Mel Tucker and his staff. They have the best staff in the Big Ten as well. Ohio State does. You can debate with Michigan State and maybe some of these other schools like, Wisconsin, though that's kind of a stretch, or other smaller schools that have to make do with little talent. But Ohio State having the best talent, best overall coaching staff, best recruiting, they're in the best position right now to win it all, and their schedule only supports that. And by win it all, I mean win the Big Ten. We're talking Big Ten here. Michigan is in an interesting position, though, because if Jim Harbaugh decides, hey, I'm going to become a meme and save my job, which means likely winning out or only losing to Ohio State. I don't think he can lose to Penn State and Ohio State and keep his job. I just don't think he can. Anyway, if that happens, Michigan can somehow find itself still at the top of the East. Not saying that's going to happen. I'm saying that Michigan State, and Ohio State are all in positions to win it. Ohio State is just far and beyond the best team. They have a mental lock on Michigan. I don't think State has the talent or the defense to beat them. State's obviously better than Michigan. Really, there's the top three. It's really Ohio State, then, a cliff. Michigan State on a hill above Michigan, then a cliff again, and then you have Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Penn State, which I think are, at this point, kind of like New Year's Six Bowl or Outback Bowl, Citrus Bowl contenders. Minnesota, if they went out, they'd be 10-2. They'd be the team who lost to Ohio State and Bowling Green, and assuming they reached Indy, they'd only lose to Ohio State again. Just going off of what I think will happen. Minnesota has improved in recent weeks. Tanner Morgan stepped up his play. Wisconsin, on the other hand, speaking of quarterbacks, they just fixed their O-line. And now ground and pound, and combining that with an elite defense. I mean, you saw what they did to Iowa. They danced all over Iowa, and Iowa couldn't do anything about it. Penn State is interesting because I would support the argument of, if Clifford never went down against Iowa, Penn State would either be a 2-loss team or a 1-loss team. And I'm saying 2 losses because the way they lost to Illinois is inexcusable, and part of me thinks that would have happened no matter what as they were looking ahead to Ohio State. Anyway, Penn State would be in a much better position with Clifford fully healthy and never getting injured, but injuries are part of the game. You can't make excuses for really anything unless your whole roster, like Indiana's, gets absolutely, destroyed. So Penn State at 5-3, they have to beat Maryland before, taking on Michigan. They absolutely have to. And in some regards, they might even have to beat Michigan because you have a 3-game losing streak. Let's just theorize, they lose to Maryland or Michigan. You're kind of back to where you were last year. If you don't win out, you don't have double-digit wins. And honestly, seeing how the preseason treated you, the season might be, in some regards, a failure. But Penn State, I'd say, at the moment, they would definitely be in contention to beat Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, maybe even Michigan State. Ohio State proved that even with not their best play calling, they can still beat Penn State by more than one score. Purdue is the team that, looking back, Purdue's lost to Notre Dame, they lost to Minnesota, they lost to Wisconsin. And looking at that, you may think, well, their play's sporadic. And actually it isn't, because Wisconsin I now think is a good football team. I think Minnesota's a good football team. And to even go non-Big Ten, Notre Dame is a team that will likely win out, even though I don't like them. And they're still a top 15, minimum top 20, maybe even top 10 football product at the moment. So Purdue's only lost to what are somewhat quality teams, and they went to Iowa and beat them, and now they face Michigan State, and that right there is a huge opportunity. Iowa, their offense is a joke, and Wisconsin just bully balled them into losing. Maryland and Rutgers, besides Indiana, are the bottom of the Big Ten East. Maryland has the better chance to go bowling. They only need one more win to reach a bowl. And they just beat Indiana, ending their, I think, 3-game losing streak is what they ended. Rutgers ended their 3-game losing streak by beating Illinois, and they are now 4-4. Nebraska's in a seemingly endless free fall. I don't know what's going to happen against Ohio State because I still feel like this Nebraska team's unpredictable, but I don't think they'll beat the Buckeyes. Northwestern and Illinois, the whole state of Illinois for football is in complete disaster when it comes to the Big Ten. Indiana even more so. Their entire team is injured. Jack Tuttle, last I checked, was out. Same with Michael Penix. I feel bad for their team and Tom Allen because, they're so banged up. They're basically like a high school team at this point, and they can't compete with the others in the Big Ten. And they take on Michigan, who's going to be mad about just losing to Michigan State. So that right there is my power rankings. And now we're going to move on to the takeaways. So the takeaways, in my opinion, are Minnesota's been rowing the boat, and no one is noticing. And I mentioned how, their play and QB play is improving. They're also on, I think, makes no sense, walk-on running backs who are still tearing it up on the field. Minnesota's 6-2, so they've clinched going to a bowl, 99.9% sure. There's always sometimes exceptions with 6-win schools, but anyway, Minnesota's looking good. They just crushed Northwestern, like Michigan and Nebraska have. Their one bad loss is to Bowling Green, and honestly, the way they lost to Ohio State was not bad at all. There were most times in the game they outcoached the Buckeyes, straight up, which is why I mentioned Minnesota's coaching staff along with the likes of Mel Tucker's and Ryan Day's, because there were moments where they were coaching circles around their defense, and even in some cases, were able to shut down Ohio State's offense. But anyway, Minnesota's coming back. They can win the West, but there's no hype around them. And I think because of that Bowling Green loss, there aren't a lot of people are paying attention to them. Jim Harbaugh and James Franklin can't win big games for the life of them. And with Mel Tucker at Michigan State, Ryan Day's not going anywhere, and you can write off Tom Allen, Greg Schiano. I would personally write off Mike Locksley. But the former two that I just mentioned, Tom Allen built something out of nothing at Indiana. in 2019 and in 2020. Their 19 team is better than most likely remember. And Greg Schiano was a guy who won at Rutgers, and he is, brings it all the trick plays. Rutgers could even somehow find a way to go bowling this season. That would be a huge achievement. So as the neighborhood's getting tougher, Michigan and Penn State, if you want to be good, then be good. But if you can't stand losing to Michigan State and Ohio State more often than not, can't stand occasionally dropping games to these competitive, increasingly competitive but smaller schools, you need to get rid of these guys. Because Franklin, I don't care that he had the number 1 recruiting class. The class will be a laughingstock if he is their head coach. And it's the same thing with all of Jim Harbaugh's recruiting classes. Recruiting is important. As Kirby Smart said, you can't outcoach recruiting. The problem is these guys aren't recruiting national, title schools. And the thing that Kirby Smart left out is if you aren't a good coach, you're going to disappoint. You're going to perform lower than your recruiting classes would indicate that you would perform. And honestly, as a Michigan fan, it's laughable seeing what James Franklin does, and it's painfully laughable seeing what Harbaugh does. We were ahead by 16 points in the third quarter. The game was in the bag if you continued to be aggressive and if you didn't play 80s style football. Game was in the bag. And I will make the argument that if you had Pat Fitzgerald or Paul Chryst as coach for the day, we wouldn't have lost that game. And credit to Mel Tucker for building a good program in year 2 and outcoaching Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh has to go. And James Franklin, he was coaching for basically his leverage against Ohio State, is my opinion. Still didn't get the job done. So that's my opinions on them. Wisconsin has found their identity and can win the West. Look, the way they destroyed Iowa, it was 20-0 at half. Graham Mertz had a TD pass and not a single turnover to his name. Iowa was held to 156 total yards. Wisconsin had 270. 16 more first downs. They also had over 10 more minutes of TOP. That right there is toxic. That is disgusting. If you as a team if you can't negatively affect Mertz, Michigan sacked him into leaving the game. Penn State forced picks. Notre Dame forced picks. Iowa, just looking at everything, Iowa had, a glorious 0 sacks against Graham Mertz. Iowa, it's proof positive. You don't throw picks against Iowa, congratulations, you've just won the game. Graham Mertz threw more yards and more TDs than Spencer Petras did. Petras also coughed up the ball. So apparently my analysis on Petras being the better quarterback might even be proven wrong in the future. So Iowa from here, I don't know where they go, to be honest. It looks like they, might just get an Outback Bowl berth. Wisconsin, honestly, they have a chance to win the West with Braylon Allen, Ches Malusi. And as long as Graham Mertz just doesn't make turnovers, because he occasionally can make those throws, Wisconsin's in contention for something. In contention for, once again, winning the West. And finally, Nebraska football is spiraling out of control. Now, this might have been a fact from a few days ago. But a few days ago, if Nebraska beat Purdue, they'd be 4-6. All they'd have to do is now beat Iowa and beat Wisconsin, which, as long as you lose to Ohio State, that gets you a 6-6 season. And with some miracles, and if they played as hard and as well as they did against Michigan and Michigan State, maybe they could have won out, though very unlikely. Now, it's very clear they are not going bowling, and if they do, then Ohio State, Iowa, and Wisconsin, all three lose, and that's just insane. But that's not happening. It's not happening. Nebraska football is spiraling out of control, and listen, as a Michigan fan, I think Harbaugh needs to go. And for Penn State fans, sanity, listen, you could go out and hire Bill O'Brien. I guarantee you Drew Allar would stay committed to Penn State because O'Brien recruited Christian Hackenberg, won at Penn State despite the sanctions, and is coaching the Heisman frontrunner, according to odds, I believe, in Bryce Young. So that's just an example. You don't need to keep the coach to maintain the amazing recruiting classes all the time, as long as you kind of have a guy lined up. Anyway, not the biggest expert on the coaching carousel, but Nebraska needs the coaching carousel more than Penn State and Michigan do, because Penn State and Michigan are still consistently having double-digit or near double-digit win seasons. Nebraska hasn't had a winning season since 2016. So you got 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Oh, wait. 5-6 years ago. It's asinine. And Frost was supposed to be the guy. It's clear he's not. He has to go after the season, barring he wins out and then wins his bowl and goes 7-6. Just has to. Adrian Martinez looked good. He has talent. He can make plays. And Scott Frost has clearly ruined him. So those are my takeaways. And now we go on to the confirmed facts. Sparta is back to its early 2010s stage of greatness. Listen, I took Mel Tucker after they beat Nebraska, after they beat Rutgers. I'm like, okay, I take this team seriously. I still thought Michigan would win, but it's like, hey, this team's going to win 8, 9, 10, maybe even 10 games. Seriously. That is what I thought. And now they can possibly win 11. So it's proof positive that you can adapt an NFL system to the college level, because that's what this is. He said this at Media Days, Mel Tucker did, that he's using the transfer portal like the NFL free agency. And it clearly is working. And I think next year they're going to win double digits. I mean, who knows what happens in the offseason, but I'm just going to safely presume they're here to stay unless Mel Tucker leaves, which we'll get to a few sentences down. But they're back to being great at the moment. And right now, they are likely at minimum going to finish second, maybe third in the East. They could finish first if some miracles go their way. Mel Tucker's a great coach. Kenneth Walker should win the Heisman. Again, I don't know if he will, because, again, quarterbacks have run it a ton. I don't know if he's exactly Derrick Henry caliber. I mean, he's great, elite for sure. But, again, that offensive line has been shut down by Indiana and Nebraska. He did well against Michigan. If he's shut down one or two more games, I'd say it's safe to say without his team going to Indy, he's not going to win it, which I kind of think is a disgrace, but it's the reality of the situation for Spartan fans and for everyone. If you're a quarterback, you have a huge advantage to win it. Ohio State's going to be the top dog in the coming years. And I say this because Michigan can't win a big game. Penn State can't win a big game. I don't know if they're going to move on from their coaches. And if they do, here's the thing as well. If they move on from those coaches, it'll take a year or two before they can do anything against Ohio State. More than likely. And Michigan State, they've done well with the transfer portal. You have to recruit 5 stars as well to match with Ohio State, because Ohio State's talent is so out there. Even rigging the transfer portal to your advantage will not ensure you that you will win more often than you lose against the Buckeyes. So for that, anticipating some coming coaching changes and the fact that Michigan State, Michigan, and Penn State, I'm going to anticipate that they'll eat each other unless Mel Tucker is truly above and beyond every other coach in the Big Ten. Ohio State's still in prime position, with Michigan State, I'd say, at close second at the moment to be the guy in the East. And another confirmed fact is the Big Ten will not get 2 teams into the college football playoff this year. Michigan State's the only undefeated team. The closest thing we could get to this, the closest, is Ohio State winning out and Michigan State, only losing to them. And maybe Michigan State wins out and Michigan beats Ohio State. But at the same time, I don't know. I just don't know. I don't see it happening. There's definitely scenarios where it would be possible, but you'd have to go outside of the Big Ten. You'd have to have Oklahoma drop a game. Maybe their last game of the season. You'd have to have Georgia beat Alabama, so a 2-loss Alabama could get excluded or something like that. I don't know. There'd have to be multiple things taken into effect for the Big Ten to get 2 teams in. So it is not happening, despite people saying a few weeks ago, because of how many were in the top 10, that it was definitely possible. Finally, this is the last thing we're going to talk about, and it'll take some time to talk about it. There could be 3 open head coach positions in the East after this season. What do you mean by that, Sam? Let's say that Ryan Day walks into the big house and, for lack of a better term, takes a dump on the U of M logo and blows Michigan out like 63-21. Let's also take into consideration that Mel Tucker only loses to Ohio State or goes 10-2, and LSU throws an ungodly amount of cash to get him, and he accepts. And let's also say that James Franklin loses to Michigan or splits with Michigan or Michigan State, and USC wants him. Or he's fired if he loses 5 games or 6 games. Don't think that'll happen. But let's stretch the rules. This is all hypotheticals. But I think it's kind of a confirmed fact. No one would have thought that after this year there could be 3 open head coaching positions in the East. Maybe you'd think Harbaugh was fired. Normally we wouldn't think Franklin would be fired or he would leave for USC. There have been people saying for years he was going to leave for SC. It didn't happen. Now, with how he acted in some of his press conferences, with how the fan base of Michigan's getting frustrated with Harbaugh, and how LSU views Tucker as a top coaching candidate, if all the things I said happen, or even if they don't happen but other factors happen, Franklin could be out, Harbaugh could be out, Tucker, only after 2 years, could also be out and follow what his master, Nick Saban, did and leave for LSU. Not saying any of these things will happen, but bear with me. This is all hypotheticals. You could, 3 open positions in the East. It'd be a completely different landscape when it comes to coaches. I would be in awe, and I'd be excited for my own program in a multiple different ways if Harbaugh was fired, and I think Penn State would. The loser in that scenario would be Michigan State, because Mel Tucker, I think is a better coach than Harbaugh. I think is a better coach than Franklin. Granted, we have seen guys, pull tricks, pull rabbits out of their hats, and they actually aren't as good as they seem to be despite their record. But hey, I'm just going to assume that Mel Tucker's better than these 2 guys at the very moment. That right there is my takeaways, confirmed facts, and my Big Ten power rankings. That is all I have to say for this video. If you like this video, remember to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and comment your thoughts down below. Thank you all for watching. Join this awesome community and help me get to 2,000 subscribers and beyond. I love Big Ten football. I love college football. Love having discussions. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you around.